At 9, my parents sent me on a short trip to Grandma's, then ghosted me for 17 years. Hi, I'm Oscar, 24, and at 9 years old, my parents told me I was going on a short trip to visit my grandparents, just a fun little getaway. That trip lasted 17 years. They never came back. But when I built the tech company from scratch and landed on the cover of a business magazine, guess who showed up with big smiles and bigger lies? I told the truth online, and watched their entire reputation go up in flames. It all started the day I missed my school play. I had one of the lead roles in a silly third-grade performance about planets. I was Mars. I had practiced my one monologue in the mirror so many times the dog barked whenever I said it. I had the red costume, the glittered props, everything ready. We were supposed to leave by 5:30. At 5:20, Mom burst into a hallway, coat half on, saying we needed to go to the hospital. My sister, Tamara, had a sudden health emergency. No warning, no reschedule talk, just panic. I stood in the hallway holding my cardboard helmet, backpack still on, saying, "But my play." "Not now, Oscar," she snapped. Dad, without making eye contact, added, "Your sister needs us. Don't make this harder." Tamara wasn't dying. Tamara had a test at school and had faked a panic attack to get out of it. I didn't know that yet. All I knew was we sat in the ER for 4 hours, me in a Mars suit, waiting for a diagnosis that never came because she was perfectly fine. A nurse let it slip she was just stressed and would be released soon. I still had my lines memorized in my head when we left. A week later, my mom said, "You're going to stay with Grandpa and Nana for a little bit. They'll spoil you." She said it like she was doing me a favor. Like I'd won a trip. I remember watching my dad toss my duffel bag into the trunk like he couldn't wait to get it out of the house. At the drop-off, Mom gave me a weird half-hug. Dad didn't even get out of the car. "Help your grandparents," was all he said before driving off. I stood on the porch with my bag, confused but trying to smile. Nana brought out cookies. Grandpa let me watch TV past bedtime. It felt like a fun weekend sleepover. Then Monday came. No one called. No one picked me up. No one even said when I was supposed to go home? I asked. Nana would smile. "Soon, sweetheart." I asked again. Then less often. Eventually, not at all. Because somewhere in me, even at 9 years old, I understood I wasn't going home. Months passed. My backpack from that day stayed by the door like I was still expecting someone to pick me up. Nana and Grandpa were kind in the way only people trying to fill someone else's shoes can be. They fed me, hugged me, and let me sleep in late on weekends. But they were old, and I could tell I made them tired. The first year was the hardest. Not because I was mistreated, but because of how normal it all tried to be. Birthdays passed. No card from my parents. No phone calls on holidays. When school started up again, Nana enrolled me like she'd always planned to. No explanation, no conversation. Just paperwork that quietly erased the life I used to have. Around that time, I stopped calling them Mom and Dad. In my head, I started saying Marcia and Glenn. Like they were distant relatives I used to know. It hurt less that way. My cousin Victor, my dad's brother, started checking in more often. He wasn't flashy, just showed up with groceries or tools to fix something. I clung to those visits like a drowning kid to a life preserver. He didn't treat me like a burden. He treated me like a kid who mattered. Then one afternoon, I found out the truth by accident. Victor was sitting with Grandpa on the porch while I played with a busted-up RC car. I heard Grandpa say, "They're not coming back, are they?" Victor didn't respond right away. Just took a long sip of his soda and muttered, "No. Not anytime soon." That night, I sat in bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow, thinking about how quietly people leave you when they decide you're not worth the effort. A few weeks later, Nana sat me down gently and explained that Victor and his wife, Lisa, were going to take me in full time. They had a spare room. They lived just a few blocks away. I'd still see her and Grandpa all the time. I nodded. At that point, I knew better than to ask questions like, "Why?" Victor picked me up that Friday in a truck that smelled like sawdust and sunflower seeds. His house was smaller but felt warmer. Lisa greeted me like I was already one of them. Their son, Jonah, was 2 years older and introduced himself with a fist bump and dibs on the top bunk. I didn't know it yet, but that room, that family, would become everything my old one never was. I didn't realize I'd already begun building a new life. And that Marcia and Glenn would never call once to check in. The turning point came when I was 13. That year, Jonah and I both joined the robotics club at school. Victor showed up to every single one of our meets, even the boring ones where nothing worked and the robot just kind of wobbled in a circle. Lisa packed post-competition snacks and Jonah, ever the loud mouth, always yelled, "Our robot's not the fastest, but we have the best snacks." We lost regionals that year. Badly. The robot malfunctioned and we didn't even place. I remember sitting on the gym bleachers afterward, head down, feeling like a loser. Victor came over, knelt in front of me and said, "Oscar, I'm proud of you." I stared at him. "Why?" "We lost. You showed up. You worked hard. You didn't quit when it got hard. That's worth something." It wasn't a big speech. But it wrecked me. Because that was the first time in my entire life an adult had said those words to me without a but attached. Not "but your sister is struggling." Not "but you need to understand." Just, "I'm proud of you." Something in me shifted. That night, I stayed up late in the top bunk with my laptop, scrolling through tech forums and DIY coding sites. I wanted to build something real, something I didn't need permission for. I started with small projects. A task management app that actually worked the way my brain did. A budgeting tool for Jonah after he kept overdrawing his bank account buying sneakers. Then a simplified interface for elderly folks to order groceries, because Nana kept calling the store instead of using the app. Victor saw what I was doing and didn't just cheer me on, he asked questions. He listened. He showed up. One day he even said, "You ever think about starting something for real?" That's when the dream started forming. I didn't have money. I didn't have support from my real parents. But I had a computer, a brain that never turned off, and a quiet little fire that said they forgot about you. So now you get to do whatever the hell you want. By the time I was 17, I had built a prototype for a system that would become the foundation of my company. Jonah helped design the interface. Victor built me a desk in the garage. Lisa printed flyers. Nana and Grandpa told every single church friend, "Our boy's building robot magic." And still, no word from Marcia and Glenn. Not a single email. Not even a birthday card. But I didn't need them anymore. That realization didn't hurt like I thought it would. It felt like freedom. At 19, I launched my startup with Jonah and our college roommate Zeke, a genius with a sleep schedule that made no sense and a caffeine dependency that bordered on illegal. We pooled everything we had, savings from part-time jobs, borrowed equipment, and a server rack Zeke found from an abandoned lab, don't ask. We called the company Rift, short for Real-Time Interface for Fluid Transactions. Catchy? No. Functional? Absolutely. Our platform helps small businesses integrate their systems, point of sale, inventory, online orders, without needing an IT department. Simple. Efficient. Affordable. Exactly what Victor's hardware shop had needed for years. First client? Nana's church. Second? Lisa's friend from the daycare center. By the end of the first quarter, we had 20 paying clients and a waiting list. Zeke built our backend like it was a religion. Jonah pitched the software like it was a mixtape. And me? I barely slept. I spent every night tweaking code, chasing bugs, and answering support emails like my life depended on it. Because it did. See, I wasn't just building a business. I was building proof. Proof that being left behind didn't mean I stayed behind. Proof that I didn't need Marcia and Glenn's approval to matter. We got featured in a local business journal, nothing major, but enough that my name showed up in a Google search for the first time. That's when the messages started. First it was a Facebook friend request, from Glenn. Then a, "Proud of you, son," comment on the article. No mention of the last 10 years. No apology. Just a clumsy attempt at claiming credit for a success he hadn't even witnessed. I deleted the comment. I didn't even tell Victor or Jonah. I didn't want to give it oxygen. But then came the big one. The Forbes Next Gen Tech list. We didn't even know we were being considered. Some angel investor we demoed for had nominated us without telling us. The day it dropped, my face, was right there beside phrases like bootstrap genius and one to watch. That night, we threw a pizza party in our tiny office. Lisa brought cupcakes. Victor brought wine. Nana cried over the phone. And then, the next day, Glenn and Marcia showed up. In person. At our office. With matching fake smiles, a gift basket, and a camera crew from their church newsletter. I wasn't even surprised. Just tired. Tired enough to finally stop pretending I owed them anything. Marcia led the way, all smiles like this was some long-awaited family reunion and not a pop-in from two people who had ghosted me for 17 years. She stepped into our office. Concrete floors, exposed beams, 3 desks shoved into a space made for one, and looked around like she was expecting tech bro glitter and was disappointed by our DIY furniture. "Oh," she said brightly. "This is humble." Glenn held the gift basket like it might explode if he gripped it wrong. "We saw the article," he said. "Congratulations, son. We knew you had potential." I blinked. "You abandoned me at 9. The air changed. Zeke, who had been eating leftover ramen at his desk, froze mid-slurp. Jonah, bless him, stepped back like he was giving me space in case I decided to flip a table. Marcia laughed, like I had just told a joke. "Oscar, sweetheart, we didn't abandon you. We placed you in a supportive environment so you could thrive. Look how well it turned out. Like a boarding school for the unwanted?" I said. "You left me. For 17 years. No calls. No visits. No birthdays. But now I'm in Forbes and you show up with crackers and sparkling cider?" Glenn's face twitched. "There's no need to be ungrateful." Ah, there it was. The word they'd always used as a muzzle. Ungrateful. "You know," I said, "I used to dream about you walking through that door. Telling me it was a mistake. That you wanted me back. But now, I'm just wondering how fast I can get a cease and desist out of the printer." Glenn set the gift basket down like he was defusing a bomb. "We don't want anything from you," he said. "Just to reconnect. You're our son." "No, I'm not," I said, calm and clean. "Victor's my dad. Lisa's my mom. Jonah's my brother. Nana and Grandpa never stopped calling. You're just people who contributed DNA." The silence was so deep you could hear the hum of the router. Then Marcia's voice, small and sharp. "Oscar, we made mistakes. But this tone, it's hurtful." I stared at her. And leaving a child with his grandparents indefinitely wasn't? She blinked. Glenn adjusted his collar. Jonah finally stepped forward. "We're in the middle of work," he said. "If you don't have a business proposal, you should go." Marcia turned to me one last time. "You don't have to do this. We're family." "No," I said. "We're not." They left without another word. The next day, a local newspaper printed a follow-up to the Forbes story, "Startup Star Reconnects with Estranged Family." A picture of Glenn and Marcia at the office, uninvited, attached to a quote from them about supporting their gifted son's journey. I didn't call them. I didn't correct it. I did something better. I told the truth. Online. Publicly. And things went nuclear. I posted a single paragraph on my personal site. Nothing aggressive. Nothing dramatic. Just facts. At age 9, I was left with my grandparents under the promise of a short visit. That visit became permanent. My parents never returned, never called, and never supported me emotionally or financially. The people who raised me, Victor, Lisa, Jonah, and my grandparents, are the ones who deserve credit for anything I've built. Anyone claiming otherwise is lying. I'm proud of where I come from. Just not ashamed of who I left behind. I didn't expect much. But I forgot how many people in town still knew my family. And how many of them had been fed stories for years, about me going to a fancy boarding school, about how I was off chasing scholarships, about how Glenn and Marcia were so proud of their boy genius. Within 24 hours, the post got picked up by a tech blog, then a parenting forum. Then someone from Glenn and Marcia's own church commented, "Wait, you told us he was in Europe on a student exchange program." By day 3, the backlash started. The church's Facebook page turned into a war zone. Half the congregation supported them blindly, parroting lines about redemption and God's timing. The other half? Well, they'd watched my grandparents raise me firsthand. They remembered Victor bringing me to events, Lisa sewing my Halloween costumes, Jonah fighting kids who teased me about being left behind. Those people didn't buy the comeback story. A Reddit thread popped up titled, "Parents Who Reconnect for Clout, What Would You Do?" Someone linked my post. It climbed fast. Jonah came into the office laughing, holding up his phone. "Dude, someone just made a meme of your mom with the caption, 'Returns after 17 years,' like it's a Netflix reboot." Zeke added, "This one's got 20K upvotes." You're officially the petty tech prince. I didn't feel petty. I felt clean. Like I had finally exhaled after holding my breath for over a decade. That's when Glenn tried to pivot. He emailed me directly with the subject line, "Let's not destroy each other." Destroy? I reread the email 3 times. He blamed. Miscommunication, claimed they. Had no idea how much time had passed. And said I was being unfair by airing personal matters. Unfair? I started drafting a response. Then stopped. Because I realized something. I didn't need to respond. The truth was already out there. And unlike them, I had receipts. Screenshots. Timelines. 17 years of silence. They could spin their story all they wanted. But you can't gaslight someone who's no longer looking for your love. By the end of that week, the entire narrative had flipped. Marcia and Glenn, once the smiling couple who raised a genius, became that awkward cautionary tale floating through local group chats and church halls. People whispered. One woman even confronted them during a fundraiser, asking point blank, "If you're so proud of him now, where were you when he was 10? They couldn't spin fast enough. Their attempt at damage control? A public post on Facebook. A real masterclass in selective amnesia. It started with, "We always believed in Oscar," included vague phrases like, "Life took unexpected turns," and ended with a painfully staged photo of them in front of our office, arms around each other, like some kind of inspirational couple who survived a storm. The comments? Ruthless. I didn't have to say a word. People from the community dragged them for me. One even said, "Funny how life only started turning once he hit Forbes." And then, because Glenn can never resist making it worse, he emailed me again. This time, he asked for a meeting. Said he wanted to mend fences, and maybe discuss a potential advisory role in your company's board. I read that sentence 3 times before bursting out laughing in the middle of a team call. Jonah looked up. Please tell me he didn't. He did, I said. Board seat. Can you believe that? Zeke spit out his coffee. Bro thought ghosting you for 17 years earned him equity. I didn't respond to Glenn. Not out of anger, out of disinterest. That door wasn't just closed. It had been welded shut and turned into a bookshelf. Instead, I did something better. I reached out to Victor. I told him everything, from the emails to the church drama to the meme of Marcia's face photoshopped onto the Home Alone movie poster with the caption, "I left my kid for a decade." Victor listened quietly. Then he said, "I'll handle it." I didn't ask what that meant. Victor's a man of few words. The kind who doesn't bluff. Later that week, I got a message from our lawyer. Apparently Victor had preemptively filed paperwork to protect our brand and company name from any and all outside claims of familial association. He included a cease and desist template ready to deploy if Glenn or Marcia ever tried to use our name in public again. I hadn't even asked? That's the kind of dad Victor is. He doesn't make noise. He makes sure you're protected. Meanwhile, Lisa dropped off a pan of lasagna that same night, hugged me too long, and said, "You don't have to thank us. Just keep being exactly who you are." Jonah? He ordered a cake with the words, "Not your board member," written in blue icing, and we ate the whole thing in the office kitchen. The internet may have given me a platform, but it was my real family that gave me peace. And I was finally starting to enjoy it. By the time I turned 24, Rift had outgrown our little startup office and moved into a sleek new space downtown. Glass walls. Exposed brick. Espresso machine that cost more than my first car. Jonah handled most of the onboarding now. Zeke ran the dev team like a sleep-deprived general. And me? I focused on expansion, partnerships, and making sure we never forgot where we came from. Our client list had tripled. We just closed a contract with a logistics chain so big we had to sign 5 separate NDAs just to look at their data. I got invited to speak at panels, podcasts, even did a TEDx talk. And yeah, Forbes circled back. Again. But with success came curiosity, attention, and eventually pressure. Reporters started asking about my early life. One interviewer said, "Your story's incredible. Your parents must be proud." I smiled. "They are," I said. "The ones who raised me are very proud." I didn't elaborate, because I knew who I meant. Then, one evening, our lawyer forwarded me a letter. Not an email. Not a voicemail. A typed, sealed, painfully formal letter from Glenn and Marcia. 8 pages long. Double-spaced. It read like a bizarre mix of apology, justification, and business proposal. They acknowledged past oversights and communication breakdowns, claimed they had been coping with stress and grieving silently. Then, somewhere around page 5, they dropped it. As your biological parents, we believe it is only right that we be included in your financial success. It is, after all, rooted in the upbringing we gave you during your formative years. I stared at the letter like it had personally insulted my keyboard. Formative years? The only thing they formed was a lifelong understanding that abandonment can wear a cardigan and still smile at church. I scanned the rest, vague threats of legal review, mentions of family inheritance law, and the ultimate insult. We hope to resolve this without involving the media. There it was. Not love. Not healing. Just leverage. I slid the letter across the table to Jonah and Zeke. Jonah read 2 paragraphs and muttered, "Is this a joke?" Zeke deadpanned, "No, but I'm about to turn it into one." Victor came by that night. Sat at the kitchen island while I read him the letter. His jaw twitched once. Then he folded it neatly and set it on the counter like a document he'd already filed in the trash. "You want me to respond?" he asked. "No," I said. "I want to." So I did. I wrote back, short, calm, surgical. "You are not entitled to the fruits of a tree you abandoned before it had roots. You were absent when it mattered, and now that there's shade, you want to sit under it. I suggest you plant your own." And then, I published it. Publicly. Not for revenge. For documentation. And for every other kid out there who needed to hear someone say, "You don't owe people a seat at your table just because they claim to have built the floor." The letter went viral in less than a day. Twitter, LinkedIn, Reddit. Even some parenting blog with a pink logo and way too many exclamation points reposted it with the headline, "Startup CEO drops the mic on entitled biological parents." At first, I was nervous. Not because of Glenn and Marcia, but because I wasn't sure how the business world would react. Founders are expected to be all vision and no mess. But the reaction stunned me. Emails poured in. Some from founders. Some from kids. Some from adults who had raised themselves emotionally and were only just realizing it. One message stuck out. A woman named Anika wrote, "I've been sending checks to my mom for 10 years just to avoid the guilt she mails me every Christmas. After reading your letter, I canceled the auto payment and took my daughter to the zoo. I didn't cry. I just breathed. For the first time in years." I read that one 3 times. Because that's when it hit me. This wasn't just my story. This was a blueprint for people who needed permission to protect themselves. Jonah came into the office wearing a t-shirt that read, "Family is earned." Zeke added one to the merch store that said, "DNA is not equal to ROI." Lisa? She cried when she saw the article shared on her PDA group with the comment, "I hope my kids grow up knowing I would never treat them like that." Victor just nodded and said, "Not bad, kid." Then came the last move. Glenn and Marcia showed up, again, this time at Nana and Grandpa's. They brought flowers, a gift basket, and a new narrative. According to Nana, they claimed they were deeply misunderstood, wrongfully vilified, and willing to forgive Oscar's outburst if he just talked it out privately. Privately. Because public truth makes liars uncomfortable. Nana, God bless her, set down her knitting needles, looked them dead in the eyes, and said, "You forgot him." "We didn't. Go home." They left without touching the cookies. That weekend I flew out to visit her and Grandpa. No press. No Instagram. Just pancakes and the smell of old books. At breakfast, Grandpa poured syrup like he was performing surgery. "You know," he said quietly, "you've built something amazing." I smiled. "The company?" He shook his head. "The way you came back stronger. The way you chose love without letting it bankrupt you." Nana reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You can still come over and cry if you need to. Grown men can cry in this house." I didn't cry. But I did breathe. Fully. Finally. The war was over. And I hadn't just survived it. I'd rewritten the ending. A few weeks after everything blew over, I walked into the office late, coffee in one hand, laptop bag slung over my shoulder, and found Jonah sitting at my desk with the dumbest grin on his face. "What?" I asked, instantly suspicious. He spun the monitor toward me. "You've got mail." It was a message from a national business journal. They wanted to feature me in a piece about founders who built companies without traditional support systems. The working title? Raised by Grit. I stared at the screen, unsure how to feel. Then I heard Victor's voice in my head. You've already proven what you need to prove. Now you just get to live it. We said yes. A week later, a journalist came by to interview the whole team. She asked the usual stuff, where the idea started, what our growth plan looked like, what advice I had for young entrepreneurs. But then she surprised me with this one. Was there ever a moment when you realized you didn't need them anymore? She didn't have to say who them meant. I nodded. Yeah, I said. The moment I stopped waiting for them to care. That's when I got my life back. After the article dropped, Glenn and Marcia went quiet. Not out of remorse, just out of strategy. Public sympathy had dried up. Their old narratives had been replaced by receipts. People had seen the real story, and the spin machine had finally jammed. Nana told me Glenn tried calling again. She didn't answer. He doesn't get to re-enter just because the lights are on now, she said, folding laundry with a precision that always scared me a little. Meanwhile, business at Rift kept booming. We brought on a full-time support team. Zeke's dev crew doubled. Jonah finally got his own office. And decorated it with nothing but thrift store art and a lava lamp he swears is vintage. Life felt, still, like a lake after a storm. And I was learning how to enjoy that stillness without looking over my shoulder. Victor and I started going on early morning walks. No heavy talks. Just walking. Sometimes we didn't speak for blocks. Sometimes he'd bring up something completely random, like how to tell if a lemon tree is really serious about growing. I never asked what that meant. I just liked hearing his voice. Lisa made me a quilt. Said she wanted to make something that took time. That's what this part of my life feels like now. Something that took time. Not flashy. Not perfect. But earned. About a month after the article dropped, I got an invitation to speak at a high school career day. The same high school I'd quietly graduated from while my parents were MIA, and Victor was the only one in the crowd clapping like it was the Super Bowl. At first, I almost declined. Not out of pride. Out of instinct. That place held too many echoes, empty parent-teacher nights, missed award ceremonies, counselors who looked at me like a paperwork problem. But Lisa said something when I told her about the invite. They didn't see you then, she said. Maybe now you show them what they missed. So I went. I wore a plain hoodie, not a blazer. Sat on one of those hard plastic chairs next to a dental hygienist and a real estate agent. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. Just trying to be real. When I took the mic in the gym, I didn't lead with the business. I led with the truth. I used to sit where you're sitting, I told them. Wondering why some kids got hugs at pickup and others got silence. Wondering why it felt like I had to be twice as good to be half as noticed. I don't have all the answers. But I built something out of that question. And now, I don't need anyone's permission to matter. The room went quiet in that way that only teenagers can make it, when they're not scrolling, not whispering, just listening. Afterward, a girl came up to me. Hoodie pulled low, sleeves over her hands. She said, "My dad left last year. My mom acts like he died, but he didn't. He just doesn't want me." I nodded. "That's not about you." She looked like she'd been waiting months to hear that. "You still get to be somebody." I added, "Even if they don't show up to clap." She smiled. "You're better than the guy from the shipping company. He just gave us coupons." When I got back to the office, I found Jonah asleep on the couch, laptop on his stomach, and a half-written email open. He was pitching a new integration to a company 5 times our size. It was messy, bold, and a little too ambitious. It was also exactly what we do. I closed his laptop gently, sat down at my desk, and realized something. This company didn't start because I wanted revenge. It started because I wanted a place where people like me didn't need to prove they belong. Turns out we built that. And no letter lie or last-ditch guilt trip could take it away. Somewhere in spring, I got a handwritten letter in the mail. Real pen. Real paper. Sloppy handwriting that slanted to the left. No return address, but I knew who it was from before I even opened it. It was from Tara, my half-sister. Technically, Glenn and Marcia's kid. She was born when I was already living with Victor and Lisa. I barely knew her. She was the second chance baby, the one they kept, the one they raised. And yet, her letter didn't defend them. It didn't beg me to talk. It simply said, I don't remember you, but I've heard about you. I think what they did was wrong. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, even if it's not mine to apologize for. I hope you're okay. I hope you know not everyone over here agrees with how things went down. I stared at those words for a long time, then folded the letter up and tucked it inside my notebook. Because some things don't need replies. Some things just need to be witnessed. Meanwhile, back at Rift, we were gearing up for our biggest pitch yet, one that could take us international for Real. Not the scrappy Berlin test run kind of international. I'm talking licenses on 3 continents kind of international. Jonah was pacing like a lawyer prepping for a court case. Zeke was half convinced we needed a backup server for the backup server. Lisa sent 3 texts in a row reminding me to eat. Victor stopped by the office the night before our pitch. No warning. Just walked in holding a brown paper bag with 2 egg salad sandwiches and said, Figured you hadn't had dinner. I sat with him in the break room while he told me about his knees, his new shed project, and how Lisa caught a raccoon going through their recycling. Normal things. Small, soft things that filled the space like background music. Right before he left, he paused at the door and said, No matter what happens tomorrow, just know, you already won. I didn't answer. I just nodded. Because I finally understood what he meant. The goal had never been revenge. It had never been headlines or shares or board seats. It was peace. And I had it now, in every corner of my life they used to occupy. The past hadn't vanished. It just stopped echoing. The pitch? It landed. Not just a handshake and a, we'll be in touch. I mean landed. By the end of the quarter, we'd signed our first global client, a chain of logistics hubs in Southeast Asia. The kind of account that required infrastructure meetings at 3 a.m., regional onboarding plans, and documents translated into 4 languages. It was chaos. Beautiful chaos. The kind I used to fantasize about when I was coding in Victor's garage, fueled by microwave quesadillas and spite. After the deal closed, Jonah dragged me out to celebrate. Not a bar. Not a club. A diner. Just us. 2 booths pushed together. A basket of fries we didn't touch until the 4th round of arguing over whether we were going to need a satellite team in Singapore. Halfway through, Jonah looked up and said, Hey, you good? I didn't say anything at first. Because I was. That was the weird part. No fire in my lungs. No tightness in my chest. No mental PowerPoint of everything I had to prove. I think I am, I said. For real this time. He raised his soda. To being done chasing ghosts. I clinked mine back. To building without asking. The next day, a package arrived at the office. No label. Just a brown box with my name handwritten across the top. I opened it carefully. Inside was a framed print of the Forbes article. And a note. We're proud of you. Always have been. Hope you'll see that one day. Mmenji. Jonah walked in right as I was reading it. He glanced at the note. Then at me. You okay? I held up the frame. They're still trying to turn the story into something they can live with. Gonna keep it? He asked. I looked at the photo, my face, their names, a caption that said nothing about where I really came from. Then I took out the article, slid it out of the frame, and replaced it with a photo Nana gave me last Christmas. One where I'm 11, sitting on Victor's shoulders at a community parade, smiling like I've never been left behind. I handed the empty frame to Jonah. Trash it. He nodded. And that was that. Not a dramatic rejection. No anger. No rant. Just a quiet no thanks. The kind of no that only happens when you finally believe you don't have to explain your piece to anyone. The summer after the expansion deal, I got an unexpected message from Elena, one of Glenn's cousins. We'd met exactly once at a family gathering when I was 8. I only remembered her because she'd slipped me a ginger ale when all the adults were drinking wine and talking over me. Her message said, Hey, I don't want to make this weird. I just wanted to say, we were lied to. For years. We were told you went to some elite program, that you didn't want contact. I'm sorry. I should have reached out sooner. I didn't know how to reply. So I didn't. Not right away. Instead, I scrolled through her profile. It was all normal stuff. Kids, weekend soccer games, recipes, a PTA fundraiser. And under one of her posts was a comment from Marcia. Proud of my sweet niece. Family sticks together. That line hit like a paper cut. Because that's what it had always been about. Not love. Not repair. Just image. Marcia and Glenn hadn't changed. They just shifted the story again. I was no longer their brilliant son. I was the angry one. The ungrateful one. The cut them off for no reason one. They couldn't use me for clout anymore. So now I was cast as the villain in their redemption narrative. I showed the message to Victor while we were changing the oil in his truck. He didn't say much. Just, you don't owe anyone access. Not even the ones with the same blood type. Later that night, I messaged Elena back. Thanks. I appreciate you reaching out. I'm not angry, just done. I've got people who show up for me now. And that's enough. She replied with a thumbs up and didn't press. That, in itself, felt like a gift. Meanwhile, Rift rolled on like a train that finally found the right tracks. Zeke launched a version of the platform in Spanish. Jonah started working on training programs for schools. We even hired 2 interns from our old high school. One of them, a quiet kid named Malik, asked me during orientation, "Is it true you built this from your garage?" I smiled. "Not just mine," I said. "It was borrowed. Everything was borrowed at first. Space. Tools. Time. Even belief." He nodded like he understood it better than I expected him to. That weekend I visited Nana and Grandpa again. We made pancakes. Watched a documentary we didn't understand. Fell asleep mid-sentence. Before I left, Nana gave me an envelope. Inside, a copy of my birth certificate. And a handwritten note from her. Just in case you ever want to make the name match the life. I didn't cry. I just folded it carefully, slipped it into my glove box, and whispered, "Maybe." Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't running from the past. I was standing on top of it. And looking forward. Fall brought a quiet rhythm to everything. Our office had grown into something steady. Morning coffee runs, team lunches, brainstorming sessions that started with ideas and ended in inside jokes. We weren't scrambling anymore. We were building. And it felt solid. One morning, I walked in and found a small package on my desk. No return address. No label. Just a neat piece of tape holding it shut, and my name scribbled in shaky cursive. I opened it. Inside was a stack of old photographs. Me at 6 years old on a tire swing. Me asleep on the couch in my red hoodie. Me on stage holding a paper star at the winter play. All clearly taken before I left. Tucked between the photos was a short note. "Thought you might want these. We didn't do everything wrong. Marcia." No apology. No ownership. Just evidence that once, for a few minutes, they remembered to bring a camera. Jonah walked in as I was flipping through them. He didn't say anything. Just sat across from me until I looked up. "Is it bad that I don't feel anything?" I asked. He shook his head. "No. It means you're not haunted anymore." I put the photos in a drawer. Not out of resentment. Not out of care. Just because they didn't belong anywhere else. Later that week, Victor and I grabbed dinner. He asked how work was, how I was, whether I ever thought about slowing down. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But I don't think I know how." He smiled. "You'll learn. Might take a little while. Especially when you've lived this long with something chasing you." We sat in comfortable silence for a bit. Then he said, "You know, if you ever want to take a break, maybe go somewhere you should." "Where would I go?" "Anywhere," he said. "As long as you don't take them with you in your head." That landed harder than I expected. Because even though Marcia and Glenn weren't in my life anymore, their absence still lived in the corners sometimes. In the way I double-checked praise. In the way I apologized too fast when someone misunderstood me. In the way I still hesitated before asking for help, even from the people who wanted to give it. So I made a decision. I booked a flight. First real vacation in years. Just me. I didn't post about it. I didn't announce it. I didn't pack my laptop. I sat on a beach halfway across the world and watched the sun rise without checking my phone once. And for the first time since I was 9 years old, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation for being happy. Coming back from that trip, something shifted in me. Not in a dramatic, life reinvention kind of way. More like quiet recalibration. I stopped checking my inbox first thing in the morning. I started walking to work instead of driving. I let silence sit in the room without trying to fill it. That might not sound revolutionary, but when you've spent your life performing usefulness, stillness feels rebellious. At the office, things ran smoother than ever. Zeke's new AI module caught a bug before it hit production. First time that's ever happened. Jonah onboarded our 50th client with such smooth energy I wanted to record it and send it to schools as proof that charisma is real and trainable. We were thriving. One afternoon, I got a message from a journalist who'd covered our original Forbes piece. She said, "I'm working on a follow-up. I want to write about what happens after the spotlight. The part where people either become a headline or a person." I agreed to meet. We sat at a cafe. She ordered a double espresso. I got mint tea because I was trying to pretend I sleep regularly now. Halfway through the interview, she leaned in and asked, "Do you ever think about reconciling with your biological parents? Like, if they apologize for real?" I looked out the window for a beat. "Here's the thing," I said. "They're not missing from my life because of one bad choice. They're missing because of 1,000 little ones. Every time they didn't call. Every lie they told the family. Every holiday they skipped. That adds up. You don't undo 17 years of absence with a Hallmark apology." She nodded slowly. "So it's a no?" "It's not a no," I said. "It's a boundary. And boundaries are there before someone apologizes, not because they did." She scribbled something in her notebook, then looked back at me. "You don't sound angry." "I'm not," I said. And I meant it. That night I called Nana. She told me Grandpa had started labeling his tools with masking tape again. In case one of the great-grandkids ever wants to build something. Victor texted a blurry photo of a bookshelf he was working on. Lisa sent a video of her new sourdough starter bubbling like a volcano. And Jonah dropped by with takeout and said, "No work talk. We're watching trash TV tonight." I didn't resist. Because this little network of people who chose me again and again, this was the only family story I needed. The rest? Just noise I'd already learned to turn down. A few weeks ago, I stood outside the house I bought for Nana and Grandpa. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place with a garden, a wide porch, and a kitchen that smells like cinnamon now because she insists on baking. For the neighbors. And then keeping everything. Victor installed the mailbox himself. Lisa picked the curtains. Jonah broke the sink once trying to fix a light. It's not a perfect house. But it's full of people who never walked away. I took a photo of them all on the porch, Grandpa reading, Nana fussing over snacks, Victor laughing at something Jonah said, and it hit me. This is it. This is what I spent years trying to build. Not a company. Not a headline. A life that didn't ask me to shrink, to beg, or to explain why I belonged in the room. Marcia and Glenn may have given me DNA. But my real family gave me space. To heal. To grow. To become. I framed that porch photo. Hung it in my office. Next to the sign that reads, "No one who left gets to claim what we built." And every day I walk past it, I remember. I wasn't rescued. I rebuilt. From scratch. And I did it with the people who stayed.